Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If I could have your attention for just a minute. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome one and all. Thank you for clinking your glasses. Good evening, and welcome to the 2014 National Bike Summit. We're always pleased to see you in Washington, D.C., but this year, given the weather, just unbelievably grateful to all of you for being here. I know people, it's humbling to listen to the stories of what you all have been through to get here, and there are still more to come, but thank you for being here and for putting up such a great showing for the summit this year. A huge thank you to everyone also from the attending the National Women's Bicycling Forum today. I think that was it's just concluded and was, I think, a resounding success, and again added a fantastic element to the summit. And huge thanks to Carolyn Shapansky, Liz Murphy, where is she? There she is. The Women Bike Advisory Board, all the inspiring speakers, the sponsors, the vendors, participants, just a fantastic job. Bill, am I clear? Am I in control? I know that's a dangerous thing to ask. There we go. I love the fact that the summit and the forum are more and better integrated each year, and that once again, both the summit and the forum share and exemplify one overall theme: United Spokes. Last summer, my God, how fondly we remember summer, I got to address the climate riders when they came to Washington, D.C. And it struck me in looking at the group that was assembled that people come to bicycling for such a wide variety of reasons: clean air, climate change, ending diabetes. You know the list. And bicycling itself addresses all manner of social ills. And here we are, as bicycle advocates and industry leaders, right at the hub, uniting the diverse spokes of our movement. Oh, I did get it wrong. I'm not in control. I knew that was an issue. We're uniting the diverse spokes of our movement. We're providing strength, unity, power, and direction. And that's what we're doing over the next 2 days for our movement here at the National Bike Summit. Now, the summit would not be possible. It's right there in front of me. There's a screen that I can see without peering to either side. Why do I not get this? So the summit would not happen without some very important people. Obviously, you, the participants. I honestly don't know how many people are here this year at this point, but it's probably close to 700. And we've got pretty much every state in the nation covered. The Dakotas, I don't think, are here this year. And I know we have at least 3 current and 1 former Commonwealth country represented here tonight. A huge thank you to our sponsors this year. Please take a moment to thank them at their booths tomorrow as you see them during the day. Especially, I guess, the free beer from New Belgium. That always... the awesome bags from Timbuktu. And more helpful than we could have imagined, the extra layers of clothing from Primal that are in your bag. I'm delighted that we have with us this evening for the second year, a group of students from Lees-McRae University in North Carolina, thanks to People for Bikes and a scholarship. We've got about 25 National Bicycle Dealer Association scholarship recipients. Where are you, representing the retail side of things? Okay. and a group of riders from We Bike NYC who... So if you thought trudging through a few inches of snow was tough this morning, you guys rode 350 miles? 250? Oh. I thought that bridge was out, but okay, you're lucky. And arrived here on a lovely warm Sunday afternoon, as it turned out. Thank God you arrived yesterday, not today. It's, as I say, really quite humbling to hear the different ways people have gotten here and rearranged their schedules to be here. I also want to recognize another important group of people, and I'm going to ask them to join me on stage in just a second, because I want to say a word about three other people who are a very important part of the summit and the bicycling family who are not able to be with us this evening. The first is the irrepressible John Pucher, Professor John Pucher, who we lovingly refer to as the Tigger of the bicycle movement, who is recovering from prostate cancer treatment. And if there's anyone at your table who's blushing and looking at their feet rather awkwardly at the moment, they're probably on John's email list and know a lot more about his insides than they ever bargained for. John was our keynote speaker in 2007, and we wish him a continued recovery. The second person is Deb Hubsmith, who has been to every bike summit until today, and as many of you know, is in the biggest fight of her life with leukemia. And it really isn't the National Bike Summit without her. For 13 straight years, I've gotten a call about 2 weeks before the summit from Deb. Hi, it's Deb. How's everything going with the summit? Uh-huh. And the California meetings? Uh-huh. Oh, well, I'll be in D.C. on Friday. I'll come by and sort things out. Deb, we love you and we miss you, and there's a seat for you here in 2015. The third person is Gail Spann, the outgoing chair of the League's board, who starts chemotherapy to treat her breast cancer tomorrow. She is contributing to the League in many, many ways, including presiding over this fine group of people who are going to join me on stage right now, the League's board of directors, current and immediate past members of the board. So please join me. Please join me in thanking them for their service, their dedication, their insight, their wisdom. Hopefully there's enough room for you all up here. Thank you all for your service. We really appreciate it. And please take a moment to seek these people out, talk to them, ask them questions, find out more about what the League is doing. And we're really proud of this fine group of people. Thank you very much. So Gail has presided over a remarkable year for the League. You can see we have an awesome board. You know we have an amazing staff. And during the course of the summit, I hope you'll see and hear how we're helping you to make a difference in your communities. Our equity initiative, addressing women, communities of color, and youth issues, is transforming the League. It's improving every aspect of our work and helping generate a roadmap for change that we can all follow. The National Bike Challenge is working through companies and local advocacy groups to change behavior and inspire people to ride. The Advocacy Advance program with the Alliance for Biking and Walking is helping state and local advocacy groups access tens of millions of dollars for bike and pedestrian projects in communities all over the country. And the Bicycle Friendly America program is inspiring change in hundreds of communities, companies, and universities across the country. Our board and staff convened in October for a strategic planning retreat. And while there, we gained the realization that there's broad understanding of our programs and what they do and how they operate, But we spent about a day and a half answering the question, why do we do these things? And we were emboldened to come up with the belief statement that's cleverly concealed, if you haven't found it yet, in your summit program. Unfold your summit program all the way, and you'll see our belief statement. We also tackled a new vision and mission statement. We agreed that our mission is to lead the movement to create a bicycle-friendly America for everyone. Then something really interesting happened. Someone asked the awkward question, lead? Really? What do we mean by lead? Honestly, no one was comfortable declaring leadership, but aspiring to lead and asking you, advocacy and industry leaders in your own right, to be our judges, listening to and learning from you, that is appropriate. Defining leadership in the context of being willing to ask the tough questions, having the confidence to know what questions to ask, of whom, and what to do with the answers, that's how we want to be judged. Committing to you to share the answers, if we find them, and move forward together, that's a style of leadership we can adopt with pride and humility. Now, if you think these are just buzzwords we picked up at a Peter Drucker book club, cast your mind back to the research we commissioned last year on the effectiveness of our message, our messengers, and our movement on Capitol Hill. That was challenging and sometimes hard to hear, but we learned a huge amount from it, and we've been sharing those lessons with many of you all year. Well, guess what? Douglas Meyer is back tomorrow with the results of a similar project we asked him to do with mayors and local elected officials. And the results, once again, aren't always pretty, but if we learn from them, we'll do a better job of creating a bicycle-friendly America for everyone. Rethinking our education program. Rethinking our education program will test this new way of doing business for us in the coming year. We've struggled with our education program. We've changed the name, we've softened some of its rough edges, we've incrementally made the materials better, but it's still not there yet. Now, many of you are making it work and delivering impressive education programs. There's a great session featuring Bike New York tomorrow, for example. And there's clearly a need for a national credential, for the core messages to be consistently delivered. Our Education Director, Alyssa Simcox, is listening and learning. She's talking to many of your groups and asking the difficult questions. How can we add value? How can we be relevant? Provide you what you need and then get out of the way. We don't have all the answers yet, but I do want to take a moment to recognize one of the remarkable people who is helping with this change while still teaching classes, while still certifying instructors, and helping lead our education program to a better place. Now, our Educator of the Year does not know this is happening, but we want to recognize and honor Jennifer Larita for her leadership in our education program. And the words with which people nominated and suggested Jennifer were, it was all about inspiration, passion, compassion, her ability to educate and capture people and really take them to a better place was quite striking. So thank you very much. Staying with the education theme, for the third year, I think, in a row, I'm delighted to welcome Heather Fortune of Saris Cycling to introduce the 2013 Saris Poster Contest winner. Heather Fortune.
So this is our third year, or 2013 was our third year doing the poster contest. In 2013 we had, 28 states participate and thousands of fifth graders participate in the contest. Our goal when we started the contest was to simply engage youth and create young bicycle advocates by getting them to simply think about the inherent benefits of the bicycle. Each state winner gets a bike, a light, and a helmet, and then we bring one national winner here to DC for the National Bike Summit, and also to go on Capitol Hill and meet with their representatives, which has had a huge impact on the students and actually with their representatives as well. So tonight I'd like to introduce Hannah. She won the poster contest in Mississippi last year. She competed against thousands of fifth graders throughout the country. Her posters showed great insight and creativity into the poster contest theme. So Hannah, do you want to stand up? She's not. Hannah's, oh, she's right. Hannah, stand up one more time, will you? Hannah's right there. She's not excited about coming out here anyhow. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, she's too nervous to come up here.
So it turns out you all are a little intimidating, and she's not very comfortable coming up here. I don't know, you don't look too bad to me, but there you go. Congratulations, and there's a framed version of your poster, and thanks to Saris again for your support of that effort. Now then, where do I go next, Bill? Oh, I'm not in control now, am I? You're taking over. So I believe that I'm going to invite Tim Blumenthal to come join me right now. Yes, I am. So the bike industry has been a vital and significant sponsor of the summit from day one. You all know Tim Blumenthal, president of People for Bikes, and we're delighted to have People for Bikes as a sponsor this year. So please welcome Tim Blumenthal.
Thank you.
Yeah, go get your mic. So, Tim, this time last year, we shared with you the new look and focus of the league that was part of our evolution.
Sure.
You've been through a few changes yourself in the last 12 months. Why don't you tell us about that?
It actually, whoops.
He's in control. It's those people back there, Tim, that are... Just start talking.
Hello. How's that? Good. All right, Andy. Yeah, People for Bikes, we launched it here at the National Bike Summit. Maybe you'll remember that. It was 4 years ago. I can't believe that it was 4 years ago. And we had Bikes Belong as a brand since 1999, and it served us very well.
Yep.
And then 2 years ago, we launched something called the Green Lane Project. And then 4 years ago, thank you. 4 years ago, we launched People for Bikes, and I think we decided that there would be power and unity and strength and clarity by bringing them all together. And so last September, about the time of Interbike, we said, everything is People for Bikes, and you get fined if you say the word Bikes Belong. The only problem with that is that we all say it about 6 times a day. I've said it 7 times today. I owe $1.75 to the kitty, and I should present you with a pair of Bikes Belong socks, but I won't. But I mean, so it's all now one clear, powerful brand. We like it. We think it's a nice combination of popsicle colors and the strength of black, but it's got to go deeper than just the image, right? So what is it about? In the most simple terms, and Andy, thanks for bearing with me on this. You know, it's about reinforcements, okay? It's about bringing additional strength to the movement. It's about new people, lots of people. You may remember when I was up here 4 years ago, I said maybe 50 million Americans will ride a bike this year, but less than 1% are actively engaged and involved in standing up. We need more people who either ride bikes or like riding bikes to stand up, right? So, new people, new ideas, and I think a good example of that would be protected bike lanes that we'll all agree are one of the strongest and most positive trends going on, right? New money. New money, all of you who are engaged in bike advocacy at any level, all of us who work on a national level on bike advocacy, we know we need more money. We know we need to diversify our sources of funding. We just absolutely have to do that, right? And we're trying. So the goal is new money, and then that all sort of comes back together in the form of what we really want, I think, why we're here in Washington right now, more clout. We need clout. We need political clout. So in 2010, coming out of the gate, we gathered 171,000 people. They signed a pledge back then. Next year, 2011, we went up to 439, 656, 764. We're at about 800,000 people right now, and if all goes well and we do good work this year, there'll be more than 1 million people. And that's something. It's an intermediate accomplishment towards a very big goal, and that is to make bicycling better in America. So, yeah.
So one thing hasn't changed in the last year, in the last 2 years, the last 5 years.
Yeah.
We want, as you do, more people riding bikes more often.
Yeah.
And the audience knows all the reasons for that. But what are your specific goals? Walk us through this chart.
I feel like
it's
a fireside chat. You know.
Walk us through your numbers here, Tim, that are on the screen.
Well, wait, I got to stand up for this.
You need to do that.
Because if it's going to be 5X, I can't be sitting in the chair, right? I mean, so the basic goal is all of the key measures of bicycling, we would like to see them grow by 2025 by 500%. And a lot of these ideas came out of discussions that all of us had when we were pondering unification. Yeah. And the basic idea is if we can get 5 times the number of people riding bikes, 5 times the percentage of trips being made by bikes, 5 times the government investment at all levels in bike paths and bike lanes and bridges and underpasses and education programs, 5 times the number of mountain bike parks that are really going well, 5 times the number of protected bike lanes that are really absolutely a hit and a key reason why bicycling has doubled in big cities in the last 5 years. 5X, I think, and 5 times the number of people engaged that we have right now. And, you know, this is not some number where I was sitting in my office and I looked at the clock and I said, it's 5 o'clock, let's go for 5X. I think we all agree that the very best cities in the United States are 5% or close in a lot of these measures, okay? So I think 5X is a clear goal, and we're going to be working together to achieve them.
We are, and you have been laser focused with the Green Lane project on protected lanes and on using that particular technique to get us towards that goal. Sure. What's in store for the Green Lane project?
Right, so the Green Lane project is about to enter, I'm going to sit for this one because it's for the interested but concerned and casual. No, we're about to announce phase 2 of the Green Lane project, where we're going to announce 6 new cities, and that will happen here in the next week. And we have 6 focus cities. We had 6 that we named 2 years ago. They really did a fantastic job of supporting protected bike lanes. And I think you'll agree from all your great work on the Bicycle Friendly Communities program, it's not just the focus cities, it's the inspiration and the competition and all that, right?
Absolutely.
That is absolutely key. And, you know, you've been you and your staff have been really helpful in helping us identify what we should look for in the next series of Green Lane cities. And I just would say this, the combination of bike sharing systems and protected bike lanes is one of the greatest things going for bicycling in America, and we just need to keep it going.
Yeah, and it is transformative. Yeah, and we see that transformation in all the communities that are, you know, psyched about getting a particular level of designation. Protected lanes are now top of the list, so it's made a huge, huge difference. Sure. Now, you also last year told us about the Leslie Bohm Strategy Center. Give us an update on that and in particular the business network.
So, sorry. Hello? There we go. Okay. You all, those of you who have been coming to the Bike Summit for years, probably knew and relished and admired Leslie Bohm and his tremendous leadership for bicycling and to try to bring us up in influence and clout. And Jen Dice joined us a year ago in January to run something that we officially call it the People for Bikes Business Network. And really what we're doing is we're trying to lead with the power of business, tell the story of jobs, tell the story of taxes, develop a whole new group of influencers for bicycling. So we're talking about not just elected officials, but we're talking about non-endemic corporate CEOs. We're talking about media moguls. We're talking about pro athletes. We're talking about celebrities, people who have influence, who have a podium, a pulpit, are heard and respected, who can talk up bicycling. So we've been conducting a series of meetings, dinners, bike rides, all these things to bring, it's all part of one theme, and that is to bring reinforcements. And all of that revolves around building more political clout. And so far, I would say it's going really, really well. And I think all of us here know influencers beyond the realm of elected officials, influencers who like bicycling personally, or believe in bicycling personally, and if we ask them in the right way at the right time, they'll help us succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tim, let's talk about us now.
Yeah.
How are we doing?
Andy, we're doing absolutely great, and we really are. And I come here, I see the energy here.
It's amazing.
I see your ability to maintain a good sense of humor on a very difficult day. And
it's a good staff, you know that.
Yeah, I know that. And I would just say that I think we're really back on track, and we're going to be working really, really closely together on some good things this year. And when we do work together, we always thrive. So, maybe we should talk about a couple of those things really quick.
Well, first of all, thank you for sponsoring the summit.
Sure.
That makes a huge difference. You mentioned the Green Lane Project and the Bicycle Friendly Community Program and the connection there. And yes, we're pleased to be part of the process, and vice versa with your help with the BFC program over the years. We're going to be working specifically on one project, the Bicycle Tour Network Conference in November. Talk about that. Do you want to say a word about that?
So I don't know if we have a slide, but in San Diego in November. There we go. Look at that. Wow.
We got some participants already, and maybe some sponsors. Who knows?
So I think we all know that bike tourism is growing throughout the United States. I think that bike tours play an indispensable role, but tourism in general is something that you care about, People for Bikes cares about, Adventure Cycling cares about, and also, just on a practical level, being in San Diego in November to attend a conference is not hazardous duty, right? But the point is, we need to do a better job of measuring and sharing the success stories of bike tourism and promoting bike tourism, because it's a big economic driver. It's a big economic driver in Pennsylvania. It's a big economic driver in California. Really, all 50 states, we don't do a great job of measuring it. But I think we'll have a really good time working on that one.
Measuring and telling that story, and making sure people understand those benefits and that value. Great. So we're looking forward to doing that with you and with the Bicycle Tour Network and Adventure Cycling, all those partners. Thank you again for your support, for your sponsorship, and it's good to see you.
Yeah, no, it's great to see you. I think the energy, the enthusiasm, the reports that I heard from today from the Women's Summit, amazing, really, really positive. I think all the extra events that get piggyback sort of on top of the summit are really, really great. The look and the feel, I like this room a lot, and I'm excited to be here. So thank you very much for welcoming us.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Tim. All right.
Thank you.
All right, see you, Tim. Yeah, stick it back there. So one of our new board members who wasn't able to be here this evening is a gentleman you may know, Congressman Jim Oberstar, which is pretty cool. He complained, I think in front of you all, that I have lost all of my influence because my English accent is gone. So in order to rectify that, I thought we should have a speaker from England with a proper accent to come and deliver the opening keynote address of the summit this year. And I'm delighted to welcome to the stage now Philip Darnton, who is the Executive Director of the Bicycle Association of Great Britain. He is formerly a global marketing guru with Reckitt and Coleman. He was head of Cycling England, obviously in the UK. And one of the reasons, other than his spectacular accent and dry British sense of humor that I know you all love, is that Cycling England has sort of gone through the journey we're going on right now. It was a well-funded, centrally government-funded project that suddenly disappeared, and stuff started to happen at the state and at the local level. Philip has been through that. So we're looking to his experience and guidance to help us through the next few years in the US. It's my very great pleasure to welcome Philip Darnton, OBE, to the stage. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you who were up at 8 o'clock in the morning, which was quite late for me by London time, will have actually heard a very, very important phrase used by Dorothy Nichols. And she said, "Do something really scary today." That's what I'm doing. So Dorothy, thank you for that. That's just great. That's what I wanted to hear. I'm not really going to tell you what I do, because what I'm trying to do is to save my soul. I spent 30 years working for a multinational selling soap and detergent. And I'm hoping it's not too late. But I am actually very, very flattered to be invited here to speak to you tonight, representing the 17th most important cycling country in Europe. I think I'd better tell you actually a number of the things that I'm not. That's quite a good starting point. It's a sort of health warning to everybody. I'm not an academic. I'm not a researcher. I'm very, very pleased to say that I'm not a consultant. I'm not an urban designer. I'm not an engineer. I don't belong to a campaign group. I'm not a distributor. I'm not a retailer. And I'm certainly not a cyclist. I don't know whether any of you have looked up recently in the Oxford English Dictionary the definition of a cyclist. Maybe you look in Funk and Wagner, I'm not quite sure. And I checked before I came here today on what the Oxford English Dictionary says a cyclist is. It says a cyclist is somebody who's male, who's aged 19 to 33 or trying to recapture lost youth, who is middle class, above average income, 6'7" in his stocking feet with hairy knees. Apart from that, he's fueled with testosterone, generally in shorts or lycra, completely colour-blind at traffic signals, and takes no prisoners at all. So I'm not one of those. I'm a wibbly-wobbly person who goes around on a bicycle. Now, I was told by Andy what the topic of my speech tonight would be, and he told me it was called Lessons from Across the Pond. I thought this was quite dangerous, actually. I certainly haven't come here sent from Her Majesty to give you any lessons, or indeed to tell you what to do. There are actually both advantages and disadvantages of speaking to you in English. The advantages are that you probably assume that I'm related to a minor royal, or maybe I live upstairs in Downton Abbey. Downton Abbey. There are also, of course, some disadvantages. And very, very early on in my career, I was sent by Unilever, by Lever Brothers, to Scotland. And I had to sell Hamish McTaggart some soap and detergent. And I went in and said, in as convincing a voice as I could, "Good morning, Mr. McTaggart. My name's Philip Darnton. I'm the regional sales manager for Lever Brothers, and I'm here to sell you a lot of soap and detergent." This was in Auchterarder in the Highlands, and even in those days, Scotland wasn't quite sure whether it was part of the United Kingdom, but it hasn't got any surer as time has gone by. And Mr. McTaggart looked at me for a long time, and he said, "I wonder if you could just answer a question for me, which is, why does your company think that it needs someone like you to sell soap to someone like me?" And that's how I feel tonight. But actually, all countries, I suspect, are really rather different. And the real solutions are very, very local. We've got obsessed in the UK with the Netherlands. Everybody keeps going on and on about the Netherlands. And people say, oh, you know, we even had a campaign called Love Cycling, Go Dutch. We thought that just meant not getting your wallet out, but apparently it meant something else. The trouble is that actually there's nothing similar between the Netherlands and the UK at all, because they started in 1973. They never stopped. They never looked back. They've been absolutely consistent. There's not been a political issue of any kind whatsoever. They have entirely different population density. They've never manufactured cars in the Netherlands. They don't really have a class structure like we do. We're good at that. We're really good at that. And they have an entirely different culture, which doesn't seem to be to do with trying to drive cyclists off the road. I really can't think what lessons there are that I could possibly talk about. And then I heard today about what's going on in Boston. Really fantastic. Really fantastic. I was told authoritatively, so I have to believe it, that there's a lot going on in Chicago. And I do know for certain that there's a great deal going on in New York. Really astonishing. And I didn't even mention Portland. I've never been to Portland, but everybody tells me Portland's different.
Especially Portlanders.
So all I'm going to tell you about is a few observations I'd like to make about the UK, and you can make up your own mind whether they have any relevance to you at all. The one last thing I'd say by way of introduction, because the rest of the speech is quite long, that's the first not joke I've made, actually, is that I'm not going to tell you anything new at all. You're not going to hear anything new. I promise that, most sincerely. You have heard it all before. You've rehearsed all the arguments endlessly. The other thing I would say is that there are no PowerPoint. If I'd known that I was going to be on the screen the whole time, I might have brought some slides. But what I am going to say is something about what we've learnt or not over the last 20 years. That will take the first hour. The big lessons that come out of it. Then I'd like to tell you why absolutely nothing has happened at all, and what we can do about it. If I just summarize the last 20 years quite quickly, let's take 1997 to 2004. No culture of cycling in the UK at all, less than 1.5% of trips by bike, declining year on year, very steadily. Government absolutely not committed to cycling and investing less than probably about 50 cents per head per year in cycling, and wondering why nothing much happened. You don't get much for nothing. There's no public interest in cycling whatsoever, and 60% of all car trips, still true today, are less than 5 miles. Even I can do that. However, in 1997, the outgoing Conservative government said we must do something, probably because they knew they were outgoing. And so they had a big debate in Parliament, and the House of Commons conclusion was, the case for encouraging cycling is so obvious that we should not have to put it to a debate. It should be central government policy. Oh, that was good. That was the end of that. And so we had no leadership, we had no budget, we had no plan, and we had any number of campaigners. And as you know, campaigners, like retailers, are actually rather independent in spirit, which means it's very hard to get them facing in the same direction for 10 seconds at a time. Actually, nothing really had changed. I gave you that quote from 1997. A predecessor of mine, not my immediate predecessor, said in 1928, yeah, I'm not that old. He wrote to the Times. I've got the piece here under the heading "The Wheels of Chance" to the editor of the Times from the director of the British Cycle and Motorcycle Manufacturers and Traders Union, Coventry. In view of the fact that the bicycle is the daily transport of nearly 4 million people, this vehicle is entitled to its fair share of the road. It is open to doubt whether any other form of road transport, except perhaps tramway cars, makes such a valuable quota to the solution of the daily traffic problem. Theoretically, therefore, all other transport should give way to the bicycle. And nothing happened between 1928 and 1997 when nothing happened. However, one of the things that people know about cycling is that it's terrifically good for you, and it's very, very good for your health. But they knew that in 1873, when the Earl of Derby, speaking, said, "Those who think that they have not time for bodily exercise will sooner or later find they have time for illness." Yeah. We're now spending in the UK on the National Health Service a little over £8 billion a year directly treating the causes of obesity, and it's rising very, very fast. So actually, it's not as though nothing happened between 1997 and 2004. Nothing had happened for a very, very long time indeed, but not for lack of people coming out with very sensible things to say. However, in 2004, something did happen in the UK, and that was that we had a Secretary of State for Transport, the Transport Secretary in the Cabinet, who said that he wanted to get something done and that he wanted to make a difference, and he created a small group called Cycling England. It had a small budget. It cost about £180,000, $300,000 a year to run, and it also had a small budget to spend. It had strong lead from the Department of Transport, not only the Transport Secretary, but the Permanent Secretary, that's the most senior civil servant in the Department of Transport, personally oversaw its creation. And by the time that it had run for 6 years, it had a budget which it earned through confidence of £60 million a year. It had an action plan, and that money got invested in a focused way, and we focused it in order to get some impact. There's no point in spending money thin. To get some impact, to go back to government to say, look, it works. We focused it on 18 towns. We only worked with the willing. We didn't have time to go and persuade people who didn't want to be persuaded. That is an awful waste of time. We had integrated programs of both infrastructure and what are disparagingly called soft measures. As a marketing man, I've spent all my life on soft measures. And to me, they're pretty hard. We had very, very clear target groups. We had a a very clear statement about people, place, and purpose. Who are we trying to get at? Where are they traveling, and why are they traveling there? You can waste an enormous amount of money talking about cycling to 94% of the population who aren't listening. So we were very, very clear about the focus. We created a national standard cycle training program and reintroduced what used to be called cycling proficiency, with enough budget to give every child the opportunity to learn to ride a bicycle safely and well. It's interesting in the UK that you can't leave school until you have learnt to swim 50 meters. I'm not joking. This, of course, it does make perfect sense, doesn't it? Because we're a small island, a lot of people want to get off. Since 1932, we've been trying to convince, not me personally, but since 1932, we've been trying to convince the government that maybe cycle training should go on the school curriculum, but nobody's taken it seriously yet. Maybe in 100 years when I come back, and if I ever get invited back, I'll tell you how we're getting on. The results of this program were that, crucially for the government, the benefit to cost ratio of this program of investment was calculated by the Department of Transport itself as somewhere between 3.5 to 1 to 5 to 1. In other words, for every dollar they put out, they got $5 back in benefit. There is no program in any of the transport department's portfolios which produced a result anything like that. You certainly can't get it out of railways. You're lucky if you get it about 1.3 to 1 out of a railway. So the results were quite interesting. We saw a 27% increase on average in our 18 cycling towns over the first 3 years, and an 8% per year increment after that. The interesting feature of it too was that this money was spent outside London, and London at the same time was also spending money directly on transport. And we saw more and more of these white middle-class male cyclists who now dominate the London scene. And interestingly, and I'll come back to it, London was the first, and at the time only, city in the UK that had an elected mayor. We might come back to that. So that was the second phase until 2011, and as Andy says, in 2011 we had a new government. I say we had it because we didn't vote for it. We voted for one party or the other, and we got a mishmash of the two, which was called a coalition. The coalition had an ideological decision that they took before they came to power, that they would do away with what they called quasi-autonomous non-government organizations, quangos. And that really was directed at fat cats who sat on the National Potato Advisory Council, took very large salaries each year, and unknown to us, Cycling England was registered as a quango. So we were abolished. And on the 31st of March 2011. And if anybody wonders why it says on my business card OBE, what it meant was over by Easter. And that's exactly what happened. It was all over by Easter. And the Prime Minister came up with two great phrases, one of which was, we're now part of the big society. And the big society means that we all go home and help one another. I pop home every evening and cut my neighbour's grass, and he comes back and helps me make some tea, and we have this really terrific big society in England because David Cameron said we had. And he then went further, and he said, actually, we don't need to spend any money on the big society because actually that's all sort of big government stuff, and we don't believe in that. Local people know best. And we haven't got any money for it, so, just get on with it. And that was that. And that was the end of that. So what happened then? Well, actually, we then won the Olympics. So the Prime Minister had to change his tactics a little bit. And he said to one of his civil servants, I think we should have a cycling revolution. So this was written down on a piece of paper, which was handed back to the Prime Minister when he was at a small football stadium in Watford, which is an unknown non-place north of London, on a Thursday. And his press secretary handed it out, said the Prime Minister says there should be a cycling revolution. So that was that done. He got that all done on a Thursday, and he got back to Syria or something on a Friday. So we had a cycling revolution. Nobody quite noticed that. In London, we had another mayor then. We had Boris. And Boris said, I really, 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 really believe in cycling. We've got to do everything we possibly can for cycling. It's very, very important. And so he then started painting a lot of blue lanes around. And then people said, well, won't it interfere with the cars? And he said, oh, well, I hope not. I mean, if it does, just stop them short and let them. No problem. I mean, just get on with it. I'm not frightened. Why should anybody else be? And utter pragmatism of the worst kind. Extraordinary, really. But the upshot of this, of course, was that there were odd people who were quite keen on the agenda, but the moment they disappeared, the thing stopped again. So what happened then? This uniformity of campaign groups of people who between 2005 and 2011 saw that there was a terrific opportunity for cycling, and that while they could still all do their own local pet project, cycle the Atacama Desert and things of that kind, that actually they all held to a core agenda. More people cycling, more safely, more often. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get it done. We're going to make it happen. And then, in 2011, of course, when that all stopped, we then had a lot of campaign groups who were earnest and determined to chase the available money for themselves. And so we've now had Cities Fit for Cycling, sponsored by the Times. We had the one I mentioned, Love Cycling, Go Dutch. We've had Get Britain Cycling, which had exactly the same recommendations in it. I have it here. Get Britain Cycling is a document that looks something like this. And that had exactly the same recommendations in as the 1997 I Don't See Why We're Debating This had in it. But it took quite a long time to write. But we had Choose Cycling. We had Space for Cycling. We have Moving More and Living More. And there's even a suggestion that we might pick up from Australia, Vote for Cycling. No consensus. Everybody just after their own interest. And everybody doing their best. So what's happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so I thought I'd just give you a few of the lessons before we move on to the second part of this extensive. Are you enjoying it so far? Is that right? Bloody hell. I'm going to get into a lot of trouble for this, don't worry. The lessons from the UK, I think there are about 8. And if I had a slide, I'd put them up. The first lesson is, for us, get yourself a mayor. You really, really need a mayor. If we look in Little England at the places that have done well for cycling, they've all got mayors. We had a mayor in London, indeed. We had a mayor in Bristol now, absolutely brilliant. We've got a mayor in Paris, we have a mayor in Seville, a mayor in Barcelona. You've got mayors, get yourself a mayor. That's the first important lesson. And it is important because the serious point behind that is about leadership. And the first lesson that we have learnt bitterly and unlearnt is if there's no leadership, there's no cycling. That's the first one. The second one was given to me by a delightful Swiss gentleman who, when I started out on this, I said to him, you know, what do we do? What do we have to do? And with great earnestness, he said to me, start a long time ago and keep going. if there's one difference between England and continental Europe, it is actually about continuity. They took a decision in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in Sweden outstandingly, and subsequently to some extent in Germany. They took a decision in 1973 that they would invest in cycling and they would never stop, and they have never stopped. Continuity and consistency and a budget line every year, and that budget, as a matter of fact, is still as high as it was in 1973. Continuity. The third one, which our Department of Transport still does not understand, because they're about to come up with something called a delivery plan. It's the same as a sort of action plan, I suppose. It's a long list. But a plan without any resources isn't a plan, it's a wish. And that's what we've got at the moment. We're going to have, in the autumn of this year, just before the next election, so nothing will happen with it, and a delivery plan with no money attached. If you don't have leadership, and you don't have any continuity, and you don't have any money, you're not going to have any cycling. The next point I would say is that we did learn, and people still go on about it as if we hadn't learnt it, that investment in cycling works and it pays back. If you can find a budget of $15 a head of population and spend that $15 per head of population, it doesn't matter how small the area is you do it in, but you spend it at the rate of $15 a head on infrastructure and on smart measures, you will actually get results and you will see the money back. The next point, a lot of people will say to you, build it and they will come. We've built a whole load of crap and they didn't come. In fact, one of the things that Cycling England was going to do, if it had lasted long enough, was to take a sign that the Department of Transport had designed very, very carefully. It's very beautiful. If I'd had some slides, I'd have brought it with me. And all it says on it is for use at tricky points when you're building infrastructure. And you build 100 meters, 300 feet of cycle lane. It's not bad. And then you get to a really tricky junction. What on earth do you do? You go to the Department of Transport and you get out from the drawer a nice sign. It's white on a blue background and it says, cyclists dismount. Problem solved. There are thousands of these. So if you build it, you better make sure you build it well and that it's joined up and that it's coherent and it goes from end to end and is properly considered. So build it, they probably won't come. The other thing I think that we've learnt is that everyone doing their best simply isn't the answer. If there's no long-term strategy, if there are no plans, if there are no targets, everyone doing their best is not going to make a lot of difference. The last but one point is that actually we in the UK seriously risk what we dubbed a lost generation. Unless you train people to learn to ride bikes, and unless you get people at the stage in their lives when they want to do it anyway, it's very hard to sell things to people who don't want to buy. It's very, very easy to sell cycling to 9, 10, 11 and 12-year-olds. And they all want to learn, and they're happy to learn, and it's great fun to learn. And unless you have a program of education and training that gives every child the chance to obtain a life skill, every child the chance to go through the rite of passage from dependence to independence, you will have a lost generation. And worse than that, which is what we've got, these people called cyclists, these white males fueled with testosterone, actually are a problem to us because we've got 3 or 4 times as many of them as we have of women who cycle. And I don't know whether it's true here, but in England, it is still the case that only women can have babies. And I gather from your amusement that it may be different here, I'm not sure. But if a woman doesn't cycle, and she has a child, and the reason she doesn't cycle is because of the generalized statement, it's too dangerous, what are the chances that that child will be encouraged to cycle? There are many of you who will say, no, 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 these sorts of decisions are taken equally in America between men and women. And I'm sure that's true. In England, it's usually mother who says things like, you're not going out on that bicycle on the road, it's too dangerous. What do you think, turning to her husband, who says, sorry dear, I'm busy solving the problem in Iran at the moment, and whatever your mother says. Now, this of course is a parody, but has elements of truth about it that are really quite serious. If women don't cycle, and if children aren't encouraged to cycle, and if the sensation is that cycling is too dangerous, then in fact we will have a lost generation. If we've only got 1.5% of trips by bike now, and the next generation don't learn to ride properly, game over. So the last point that I wanted to make by way of lessons is that actually more facts won't help. And there's something very peculiar about facts. We tend to think when we have an argument and lose it, that we should go away and find another fact. And that if only we could find the killer fact, it would actually win the argument. That isn't how arguments work, actually. We know what to do. We know why we want to do it. We know how to do it. We know what it costs. We know that it pays back. And it still doesn't happen. So that's what we have learnt or not learnt. So the next question is, why doesn't it happen? Why is it that absolutely nothing happens? Year after year, we rehearse the arguments, preach to the converted, tell ourselves about environment and health and education and so on, but actually it doesn't win the argument once for all. It's so obvious, and yet it doesn't happen. Why doesn't it happen? And I think the answer to this is in 3 or 4 quick points. First of all, one of the things, oh, by the way, talking about training people, one of the things we're very keen on in England is we like to train boys and girls. If we don't train boys by the time they're 12 to ride a bike, we probably never will train them, because by the time they're 20, you can't teach boys anything at all. It's impossible. Interestingly enough, there are a lot of women who, from any age, are prepared to sign up for cycle training. But once a bloke's 20, I mean, forget it. You know, he's not going to ask. He knows the answers to everything. So there's no point in engaging with blokes after the age of 20 as a complete waste. Sorry. Back to the point. People love cars. And you better understand, if any of you are in any doubt about it, cars give you speed, they give you freedom, they give you comfort, they give you power, and in England, they give you class. That's the great thing about a car. In 1963, the Minister of Transport said, "It is questionable whether anything is so much desired as a family car." And since 1963, we have been living that dream out, and nothing is as much desired as a family car. It started off with any car. We didn't mind what sort of car it was in 1963, but by God, we mind now. If you see somebody driving a smart, new 5 Series BMW, you know they're someone. But if you see somebody driving a rather run-down, second-hand, 8-year-old BMW, you know they're a drug dealer in Brixton. So it's very, very important. Not only do you love your car, but what car is it? And it's so important to us. And by their cars shall ye know them. That's the first thing. The second thing is that people deeply believe that roads are for cars. In 1932, sorry for all this history, but I know you don't have much in this country, so... I won't be long, Andy, I won't be long. In 1932, the government abolished something called road tax and substituted it with vehicle licence duty. And the point of that was quite serious. In fact, it was Winston Churchill who did it. The point of that was that the money called road tax didn't get spent on the roads. The roads were paid for out of general taxation. But even now, on every radio programme that people are complaining about cyclists, and there are plenty of them, you will hear people saying, of course, the trouble with cyclists is they don't bloody well pay road tax. Well, there is no road tax. They couldn't pay it. But that's a justification, immediate justification for why cyclists should not be on the road, because they're not paying road tax. Roads are for cars. Now, actually, roads have been for cars for a long time, and the Minister of Transport in 1934 was Lieutenant Colonel J.T.C. Moore Brabazon. And he said in the House of Commons in 1934, "It is true that 7,000 people are killed each year in motor accidents. You will remember the number of chickens we killed in the old days. We used to come back with the radiator stuffed with feathers. Dogs get out of the way of motor cars nowadays, and you never kill a dog. There is education even in the lower animals." He really, you couldn't invent it, could you? And of course, what he meant by lower animals were people who didn't have hyphenated names and drive BMWs. It was very, very clear. So roads, first of all, people love cars. Secondly, roads are for cars. The third one is that because roads are for cars, that has been built into our planning assumptions in the UK since 1960. In 1960, a guy called Buchanan did a report called Traffic in Towns. And one of the things he did in that was to forecast the future evolution that showed why we needed to build roads as fast as we possibly could. And he said, "It must be admitted that it is a moot point how many cyclists there will be in 2010. And that is absolutely enshrined in the thinking of the Department of Transport, because Buchanan wrote all of the guidance called Manual for Streets and Roads and Bridges, which is used by transport engineers and planners to this day. So it's absolutely, whatever they do, there it is in the book. And so all of our planning assumptions are still based around that assumption that it's doubtful there'll be any cyclists in 2010. The other reason that it doesn't happen is that it's not going to be a quick political fix to change behaviour so radically. We've spent a bit more than 40 years getting people to wear seatbelts, not to smoke, and not to drink and drive. And we've spent an enormous amount of money, and we've tried to convert everybody to try and get 5% or 8% of all trips under 5 miles by bicycle from a very targeted group of people is phenomenally difficult. And it will take probably, if we start now and look at the Netherlands, 40 years. There isn't a politician in the UK, I'm sure they're different here, but there isn't a politician in the UK who's interested in what will happen over the next 40 years. No one cares, actually, no one cares. And the last point, really, on why nothing happens is that, of course, cycling is a bit of a cult. And when you look at the way in which cyclists depict themselves in the UK, you wouldn't do this here, but there's a document just being produced by British Cycling, who won all the gold medals, called Time to Choose Cycling. And on the front cover, it's got a load of people called cyclists. None of them are in anything other than shorts. All of them have got gloves on. All of them are wearing short-sleeved shirts. There is one woman, and there's a man pedaling a bicycle that's carrying nuclear waste in a can on the front. They're an unattractive group of people. And this afternoon, you would have heard in the plenary session about how important photographs are, the importance of images, that people create brands. What sort of brand is this sort of cycling? It's, frankly, if you're a normal person, or better still, a woman, it's a club you wouldn't want to join. There's no question about it. So, why doesn't it happen? It doesn't happen because there are no votes in cycling. And you may think there are votes in cycling. The Times of London did a huge campaign for 6 months for cycling, and at the end of it, put out an appeal for people to sign online a document of support. And they managed to get 70,000 people to sign. This is the most prestigious paper in the UK, formidable coverage, 1 million copies a day. There are more than 70,000 people belong to just one of our cycling organisations. So you may think that there are votes in cycling, but in the UK there are no votes in cycling. And I found a wonderful quote from somebody called Jan-Claude Juncker, who was a past Prime Minister of Luxembourg. I imagine they have quite a few past Prime Ministers in Luxembourg. But he said, "We all know what to do. We just don't know what to do, how to get re-elected after we've done it." So we know what to do, but we don't know how to get re-elected after we've done it. And that's the problem, in my view. That is absolutely the problem. So what's the answer? Phew, we got there. What can we do? There are two sorts of things we can do. The first is about us. And in my view, in England, we have to find some new friends. We have to find new friends in the media. We have to find new friends in planning. We have to find new friends in environment and education and health. And we have to get cycling into their strategies. We have to go and say to them, "Tell me what your problem is. You never know, I might be able to help you." And that's what we have to do first of all. We have to cultivate all parties, and we do that only through a unity of purpose. It was your own Benjamin Franklin who, when they were having a little local difficulty with the Brits, said, "Gentlemen, we must hang together, or assuredly we will hang separately." And that's the point. There must be unity of purpose. We must find the common ground. We must collaborate, and you may not like this, we must compromise. Now, I just want to say two other things about that, which is that I read in The Economist, which is a well-respected magazine, writing about campaigns in the United States recently. And it was writing particularly about quite controversial things like gay rights and about abortion. And The Economist concluded, "In an era of skepticism and division, standing on rigid principles can be a blunder, it turns out. It may be a tool for firing up partisans, but it is useless for swaying voters in the middle. Today's voters need to be wooed, not hectored." And that's the point about cycling. Need to be wooed, not hectored. And so how are we going to win this argument by wooing and not hectoring? And this brings us all the way back to the theme of your conference, about the idea of being united and uniting. I found a piece in Professor Daniel Kahneman's economics book, and you'll remember he won the Nobel Prize for economics. And he said, people will accept scientific conclusions from people that they trust. not from anybody. Arguments and evidence are much less important than trust. Cyclists have to be ambassadors and they have to be trusted. It's big stuff. The last thing is that we have to change the drift of the argument. We have to change the discourse. The discourse on cycling in England is hugely divisive. Most people, most of the time, hate cyclists. They find them deeply, deeply unattractive. They look nasty, they smell worse, and they behave extraordinarily badly on the road, and they have created a sense in which they are not loved and there is little sympathy for them. If you're a politician, those are not the sort of people you're ever going to take seriously. Cycling in the UK is divisive, and it therefore needs the whole discourse turned round to something that is inclusive. And the way to do that, in my view, and I told you I'd tell you nothing new, you know this, is actually to start thinking about backcasting. Not asking, how do we get from here to there, but where do we want to be in 40 years' time? And then work back to, so what do we have to do today? And the question I suggest is, what sort of street would you like your grandchildren to grow up in? What sort of town would you like your grandchildren to grow up in? What sort of country would you like your grandchildren to grow up in? And I guarantee you everybody will tell you the same answer. Not too much traffic, quite safe, no graffiti, mother can cross the road, safe from pushchair to wheelchair, and actually what will happen? There'll be more cycling, there'll be more walking, and there are places in the UK that have done it. And that's the whole point. The whole point is that roads are for movement and places are for people. And until we get the argument recast to say to people, what sort of place do you want this to be? And stop bleating on about cycling, then actually we will always find ourselves not winning the argument. And we have to, on the one hand, become ambassadors and win trust, and on the other hand, we have to change the argument so that we're talking about things that are tremendously inclusive and offering people something that they all want and for which politicians will stand up and be counted and push to make happen. And that's really what we require. And of course, most of all, we require not just a leader, we require a real statesman who says, I'll do it, I'll deliver it, I'll make it happen, I will actually change the face of this country. And recently, I wrote something for the Prime Minister in the hope that he might say it. But if anybody wants a copy, come and see me afterwards, because I'm sure somebody could use it somewhere or other. Anyway, there we are. That's it. I just wanted to say one more thing as I go, and that is that as I came down here on the plane, and you know those seats that go all the way across, there were four of us, and there were three guys talking. They were all men. They were talking to one another, and I think they might be here tonight. I'm not quite sure, so I'll be a bit careful. But they were talking about getting old and what it felt like to be old and how it was going to change really the way in which they were able to cycle and get about on their bikes. And the first one said, you know, I'm really, I've always loved the outdoors. I've loved the sound of the birds, and I really like that sense in which, you know, you can just hear everything so well. And I'm afraid I think my sight and my hearing are getting a bit poor, and I'm really sad that that's going to affect my cycling. And the second guy, because they were cyclists, they couldn't agree with one another, the second one said, you're so wrong. He said, no, 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 no. It's not. It's not all that hearing the bird stuff. He said, it's actually going out into the desert, and just watching the sun set over the mountains. That's what it is. And I'm sure I'm losing my sight. So your hearing is, neither here nor there. But my sight, that's absolutely the end as far as cycling is concerned. And I wondered what the third chap was going to say. I think he might be here, actually, so just be nice to him. He said, I don't agree with either of you, because he was a cyclist too. He said, I'm now 79, and last year I got married again. And I was lucky enough to marry a French girl. She's 22. Before we set out, obviously, going to be away for a few days, so I was in bed with Jackie, and I said to Jackie, Jackie, I would like to make love to you. And she said, but Frank, we only did it 40 minutes ago. To lose your memory, I mean, that's really terrible.
Philip, thank you very much, Philip. That was great. A lot of lessons to learn, if I can remember them. But the first one that you mentioned was get yourself a mare. Well, it just so happens that I'm going to introduce to you right now the gentleman sitting beside you who's going to come up here and just cap off the day, Mayor Paul Soglin of Madison, Wisconsin, who's going to help very quickly set the stage for tomorrow and our business tomorrow. Mayor Soglin is the mayor of Madison, Wisconsin, and he, in 2002, wanted you to know that he did the AIDS ride from Minneapolis to Chicago, 500 miles, including 3 successive days with Century rides. So he's got some credentials. He's also the chair of the bicycle subcommittee of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Transportation Committee, and as such is very heavily involved with that critical group of people, mayors. So Mayor Soglin, welcome to the National Bike Summit.
Where should I use for a microphone?
Just there.
Thank you, Andy. I'm going to try and be quick about this, but I did listen very intently to what Philip had to say and spent a good time reviewing the last 300 years of Anglo-American relations. The Revolutionary War makes sense. And I'm not sure how we drew to a tie in the War of 1812. Madison, Wisconsin, 50 miles of bicycle routes, 116 miles of this and 121 miles of that, but most importantly, as far as we know, we're the only city in the United States with an elevator on a bicycle route dedicated to bicycles. As you know, Washington closed down today with 3 inches of snow. In Madison, we count our winters by how many plowings we do, which is always touched off by 3 inches of snow. And the average winter has 12 to 14 plowings. With this storm, as it came through Madison Sunday, we hit our 35th of the year. And I can guarantee you, while this may be the nation's capital, we probably had more people bicycling in Madison today than drove to work here in D.C. So let me get to work. First, about mayors. We're a subcommittee at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. That means we meet at 7:30 in the morning twice a year. We don't get prime time. So if a mayor's going to be there, they really have to want to attend. The website is USCM, U.S. Conference of Mayors, I think it's .org. You can find out if your mayor is a member. We will be meeting again in June. And right now, we've got about 20 mayors who actively participate with our work. But what you can do between now and June is contact your mayor, remind them that the meeting is in June. You look up the attendance of who will be there, and tell them to get up at 6:30 and show up for our 7:30 meeting. Now, one of the things we are focused on is the same thing that we are focused on, and that is the hope of having a decent Transportation Act. And that Transportation Act has two critical issues which we really need to work together. One has to do with the allocation of the funds. Do those funds go to the state governments, or do they go to the metropolitan areas and the municipalities? And there should be no question, whoever said, yeah, you know in your heart and in your mind, if it goes to the governors, it is a pipeline to the road builders. If it goes to the municipalities and to the metropolitan planning organizations, where municipalities have tremendous influence, it goes not just to roads, but to bicycling, to walking, and public transit. That is what this is all about. And we need to work with everyone associated with walkability. Walkability including not just pedestrians, but bicyclists and public transit. If someone leaves public transit and purchases an automobile, they are less likely to walk, they are less likely to use their bicycle. And so that is absolutely critical, that as we share our thoughts with members of Congress in the next couple of days, that we hammer home the point that the funds have to go, and don't use the argument I just did, but use the rational argument of proper planning. That's where the proper planning is done, at the local level. And that is why when they vote for these bills, they have to focus on the funds going to the local communities. The second thing that is so critical, oh, wait a second, I want to mention something else. After this morning's session, after this morning's very first session, I went up to our moderator and I said to her, if I were to leave this conference today, I got my money's worth. That first session this morning that I attended was absolutely outstanding. What has been done here in terms of diversity, in terms of expanding cycling, and Philip alluded to it. Wealthy, middle-aged guys in spandex, that is not bicycling. It is everyone. It is inclusive, it is diverse, it is women, it is families of color, it is all of us. And the strides that were made with today's sessions, I think are the most significant I've witnessed in regards to bicycling. And while it may not fully pay off in the next 2 days, long term, in terms of regards to building that political base, what started out here today, and I know this wasn't the first effort, but it was such a major, significant one, is going to have a lasting impact on the success of bicycling for everyone. Now, on the second focus, let me just ask those of you who think you are going to be making a futile visit to some members of the House of Representatives or the Senate on Wednesday, where you're going to have little impact, please raise your hand. If you think you're going to be making a futile visit to some member of the Congress who's into the highway lobby, who's into the road builders, and who doesn't understand what walkability is about. All right, and there's some of you who don't want to raise your hands, but let me focus these comments and these remarks specifically to your job and what you need to do in the next couple of days. And I go back to our successes in the 1990s with Ice-T and that transportation bill, and also what happened in breaking the deadlock on the budget this last year. If we can weaken those members of Congress so they don't do certain things, you will have done your job. And here's what I mean by that. And I'll take Senator Johnson, one of our Wisconsin members of the Senate. I'm really not optimistic that Senator Johnson is going to be with us on these issues. But what we want to do is remind him that there are folks back home who are watching, folks back home broader than us. And if we accomplish anything, what we do is we convince him, we take away his will to go to other members of his party, more moderate members of the Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, and not try to pressure them to vote against our interests, which in turn means those of you who are going to the swing votes will have an easier time, perhaps a more, shall we say, profitable time in regards to getting the kind of vote that's so critical. We need to take away their will to fight us. And if you're Senator Johnson and you're up for re-election in a few years, or you're a member of the House and you're up for re-election this coming November, if you vote against our interests, there's actually going to be a difference in your perception based on whether or not our legislation passes or fails. If our legislation passes, we are going to be less likely to go after you. If our legislation fails, we're going to remember your no vote. And believe it or not, some of these members of Congress, even though they will stick with their guns on their own vote, they can be influenced, they are vulnerable in regards to how they move their colleagues. It was that broke the stranglehold of the Tea Party on the recent impasse on the budget and led to enough moderate Republicans in the House joining with the Democrats. It was certainly an imperfect bill, but it finally ended the deadlock. They blinked, they gave in. We have got to do the same thing for transportation. Now, I have not spoken at all as to why this bill is so critical in regards to bicycling, in regards to pedestrian interests, in regards to public transit. But, I mean, clearly, other speakers have covered that, and everybody here knows in their heart what's so important. So with that, thank you for your time. It was a privilege to spend a few minutes here. I'll be around today and part of tomorrow if there's questions. You've got a wonderful speaker and a mayor tomorrow. Dave Cheslevich, our former mayor, and others will be also doing a very important forum session tomorrow in regards to political action. Good luck, but more importantly, go out there and do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. That was perfect. Thank you. So, thank you again for being here. We start not at 7:30. We give people till 8 to start tomorrow. We will start at 8 promptly. We got a lot of material to cover. I am told it's not my decision, but the yoga instructor is not here and was way late, so there will be no yoga tomorrow. The first year, it was on the program, and I'm sorry about that. Thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for being at the summit. Have a great evening. We'll see you back here at 8 o'clock for the opening plenary in the morning.